Good morning and welcome to the December 15th, 2021 meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. My name is Jill Barnett and I am the General Manager of Lextran. Today I will turn the meeting over to Ms. Jamie Rogers, the Vice Chair of our board.
All right, thank you. So we'll call the meeting to order and I'll do roll call. So we have Harding Dowell.
He will be late, I believe.
Thank you. He'll be late. Jamie Rogers, I'm present. Dr. Ucapo.
He will not be here today.
Thank you. Mr. Motley.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Schoniger.
Present.
Thank you. Judge Hughes Thurston.
Present.
Thank you, Judge.
Present.
And Mr. Ward.
Here.
Thank you. All right, so our first item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment? Yes. So I think our official policy is that you will give your name and you will have 3 minutes for public comment and you will come to the podium right here. Thank you. Yep, and the microphone picks you up, is that right?
Yes.
Yep. All right, we'll start the timer. Just give a little. All right, floor is yours.
Yes, my name is Demetrius France, and I recently moved back home here. And can I pose a question? How many of you all ride the public transportation here in Lexington? I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, well, some things, you know, I'm a commuter, I use public transportation. It just doesn't make any sense. For example, if I was to catch the 4 Newtown bus to, say, Walmart, I have to go all the way back downtown to go 2 streets over to North Limestone, Goodwill. I could walk faster than me going all the way back downtown and coming all the way back instead of there being a connector, a bus that connects everything. And also, I'd like to say this, on the weekends, I have waited in Georgetown, 3 buses went out, but not 1 bus came back in. So being that I've traveled, they were called spotters. They look like regular people who ride the bus, but they report these type of things back to the board or to this establishment. Thank you.
Thank you. And did we capture his name for the record? Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time in coming down today. Next up, we have the approval of board minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Schoniger, a second by Mr. Motley. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we will take a vote. All those in favor of passing the board minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those, thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. The next item for business is the chair's report. We have heard from the chair. He has nothing to report. Thank you. So the next item of business is the Lextran monthly performance report.
All right. I will ask Mr. Fred Combs to approach the podium and deliver the monthly performance report for Lextran performance in November.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy to present to you excuse me, the performance report from November of 2021. Our mission statement, we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. So some highlights from November, we celebrated Thanksgiving Day by offering meals to our employees who are working that day and free rides to passengers. We did another employee engagement event with Travel and Tom's Coffee Truck that served coffee and lemonade here to employees on November 22nd and 23rd. And there is a long-range transportation plan from the state transportation cabinet that is ongoing as part of a transportation planning process. And as part of that, there was a survey. Our partners at LFUCG staged a table at the Transit Center to help improve survey responses to that. That was on November 18th and 19th. LFUCG did purchase passes to give away to folks who took that survey. And if you're interested in more information on that plan, it is the URL is gettheiretogetherkentucky.org. And Kentucky Public Transportation Association Conference was held from November 1st to the 5th. Our General Manager, Joe Barnett, and Director of Finance and Human Resources, Nikki Falconberry, attended that conference. We had 3 commendations for the month. First, Charles Combs, who's a bus operator, was off duty, and he observed a passenger who fell on her way to a bus stop on Route 4. He went to help that passenger, made sure she was okay, and then also flagged down the next bus through to make sure that she made her trip. So excellent work and awareness by Mr. Combs. Antoinette Anderson, also a bus operator, is very professional, calm, and patient. She is always so helpful and polite to all the passengers. And we got an email regarding Ed Herrera, another bus operator, that said, somebody cares about their job and shows pride in the company, and they're impressed with the team. So kudos to our staff members who received commendations for the month. Jumping into ridership for November, we were ahead of where we were in November of 2020. We're still following the same pattern as we've seen, we talked about for the past several months. October was a little bit, I wouldn't say an anomaly, but we did dip a little bit in October, but it seems that we've bounced back in November. And that same pattern was found in paratransit, where we are ahead of where we were in November of last year, still certainly below where we were, as we consider our monthly average that we've been using to track. So thinking of that in terms of that monthly average, we're around 16% below on paratransit and about 31% below on fixed route. And this chart is for to see the October, not necessarily an anomaly, but we did dip a little bit in October, but it seems that we're back to where we were in November. So looking at our productivity chart, we did about 245,000 trips on fixed route, about 14,000 trips on paratransit. We are ahead of where we were last fiscal year to date on both of those services. Revenue miles and hours seem to be in line with what we would expect. Productivity trip per mile and per hour, again, that sort of tracked along what we've seen throughout the past year and a half or so. On safety, our preventable accidents per 100,000 miles is tracking along pretty well, both for fiscal year to date, this year and last. I think that's a fairly strong number. And same for wheels and repair transit service. Injury frequency rate is about where we've seen it be for the entire year, fiscal year, which is below what it was last year. And then days with no preventable accidents, days of lost time, everything is tracking fairly well. For maintenance, the maintenance department completed all 50 of their preventive maintenance inspections in November and continues to have a perfect record on those inspections for the fiscal year. And we operated about 7,500 miles in between roll calls in the month of November. And that was a very short performance report, but that is what I have for November. If I have any questions, I'm happy to address those. Mr. Gordon.
Tell us about the on-time performance at Wheels.
On-time performance of Wheels for last month was about 70%. It is down year-to-date to about 80%. And I know Byron Robinson, our Assistant General Manager, has been working closely with Wheels for the past few months to help address some of the issues that they have with scheduling. And Byron, would you like to fill in on any of the details?
Yeah, we've started doing a weekly Thursday call with the software provider, Routematch. And the gentleman at Routematch has been going through different scenarios, showing the different tactics how to schedule, how to get the efficiency up.
Is there, is part of the reason that lack of drivers, or what specifically? Because it's never been that low before, has it?
It's lack of drivers is a big part of the problem.
And I don't recall it ever being this low.
Well, what's the communication to the rider? Because for on-time performance, I don't know what the expectation is, like, if somebody calls Wheels, what the expectation is for what's on time and what's not, but what's communicated to them?
So the on-time is defined 15 minutes, is that prior?
It's a 30-minute window, 15 minutes before, 15 minutes after.
Like what kind of a window if I was to call and needed a ride, would they be at my house in 15 minutes, or would they be in my house in an hour, or what? How does that work?
You'd have to schedule 24 hours in advance.
Okay.
And they would give you a window, say if I say 9:30, then it could be anywhere from 9:15 to 9:45.
Okay.
So before or after that window would not be considered on time.
I just want to express disappointment and hope that, whatever activity we take can get that number back where it needs to be.
That is something we have a very close eye on. George, as Byron said, they started the weekly call. He has implemented some more frequent on-site visits to Wheels to learn more about their processes and see if there's anything that he has used, any tactics he's used in previous roles that can share with them. We also now have members of the Wheels staff attend our weekly staff meeting to share their key performance indicators with us and talk through some things, and that is not that's not something that we had historically done through the years. So they are having more frequent reporting to us on those KPIs. We are also very disappointed to see that number be so low, and are working with them in an effort to get that back up.
Thank you.
In our contract with them, is there anything to hold them to?
There are performance incentives or disincentives, so yes, we do have those built in.
And then I know 2 or 3 months ago, we increased our fee that we were going to pay them so they could attract drivers because they were having a hard time attracting drivers. Has that?
That does seem to
has
have
been
helped
successful?
helped somewhat. Wheels has also started advertising their rate, the rate that they pay their drivers on some signage in front of their building to help get people in the door. So that does seem to have made some difference. Not quite enough difference that we need quite yet.
Any other questions on the performance report? I have a couple, Fred.
Sure.
So getting to your line graph, it looks like we are staying pretty steady and kind of seeing a new, I don't want to say new normal because that's overplayed, but it said pretty steady at this negative 30%. I know we've talked about, and I think Pierce trades it at a negative 11%-ish from our average. Is that kind of what you were seeing?
Yeah, and there was an industry report published from NAPTA last month, and it went through a similar calculation to this. It wasn't perfect. I think it used 2018 numbers where we use an average, and it only went through July. And what it was showing is how vehicle traffic has responded, and it's almost always had been already back in the summer to where it was pre-pandemic levels. And it showed the national trend for bus transportation at, I think it was somewhere like 60%. And through some of the stuff that we've seen in our COA, where compared to our peers, we're doing pretty good. And I know that for me personally, to say we're 30% below where we were, that's pretty good. I don't like that, but.
Well, and I wonder at what point, maybe it's a year from now, 2 years from now, because we're setting negative 30% from is that our 3-year average? What's the?
Yeah, it's a 5-year average.
5-year average. If we almost reset and start a new starting point, I don't know.
Like our new baseline.
A
sort
new
of.
baseline, if you're seeing that in the industry at all, because it's going to continue to pull down for several, I know, yeah.
Yeah, and as these numbers, it will continue to pull that average down, so it will on its own sort of narrow that gap. But it's hard for me to say, in my professional opinion, that we're going to get back to those 2018 numbers anytime soon. So it is, seasonality is so important in transportation and transit too, so to see how this changes month to month is important. And as we talk about the trend, I think that's why showing it this way to say that, look, we have been pretty close to the same distance between the average and this line. So that new normal is starting to emerge. So I think you're exactly right. We can take this back and have some different ideas or different concepts on how we can show you sort of the new, new normal or new. Would that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's very informational to get, all right, we're 30% below our pre-COVID numbers, but at some point in 2 years from now, it'll be hard to keep comparing our pre-COVID numbers and just set a new baseline for what our operating standards are. Just something to consider going forward. And then I also wanted to congratulate Jill. I think you had a couple quotes in different articles, and Lextran was highlighted in a couple different articles. So congratulations to the staff and Jill on those. And again, Emily. I know does a lot of our community involvement, so congratulations on a big community involvement schedule again as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the performance report?
We can pass it to Ms. Hope for financials.
Thank you, Fred.
Stephanie Hoke, our finance manager, is filling in this month for Nikki Falconberry. So Stephanie is going to present our financials for us. And thank her for doing that on somewhat short notice.
I don't mind. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, I'm going to go through the financials and kind of point out just a few of the differences that you will see here on the balance sheet. The operating cash is a little bit different from year to year. We're going to kind of dig into that on the statement of revenue, but the operating cash difference you will see there is the timing of the property tax and also some of the FTA funds that have been drawn down. So we'll kind of go through that a little bit deeper. As well as the work in process, that is due to bus purchases between the two different years. So that's kind of the differences that you will see on the balance sheet. Any questions on that one before we move on? All right, on the statement of revenues, as I mentioned, for those that might not know how our property taxes work with the funding, we do get the bulk of our property taxes in either the months of November or December each year. Last year, we happened to get it in December, and this year we happened to get that amount in November. So that's why you're going to see a little bit of a difference between the years in comparison on the amounts and kind of why it looks different that way. So this year we did receive our large amount in November, so that's why the property tax is where it's at now. We also did a draw on our CRISA grant in the month of November for about $3 million, so that's why our federal funds are where they are at as well. Something else to point out is the professional services. You'll see a difference there in the budget. I would like to note that that is due to timing. We do budget for engine rebuilds, and that is based on the contract maintenance and the timing. So at that time, just because there's a difference right there, that might get caught up throughout the year. It's just the timing of the engine rebuilds for the maintenance on that. Any questions on the statement of revenue?
I have a couple, but questions. Do you have questions? No. So I know, being on the finance committee, we budgeted, I think, a 2.5 revenue increase over last year.
Mm-hmm.
Are we expecting property tax? Did it come in healthier than we were forecasting?
It's pretty much about the same, I would say, as what we were forecasting. It's pretty comparable to that large amount of the check, I should say, that we got this year is pretty comparable to last year. It's just a little bit more. So I would say we are on target for what we're looking at.
Oh, perfect. And maybe it was a 3% increase. I can't remember.
I think, yeah.
Was it 3% increase? Yeah. So, and then because we had been very conservative, just not knowing what property taxes
Right.
were going to be. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other revenue, is that just a timing difference?
That is timing. That is also a little bit of accounts receivable there and some timing of our agreements with other companies and that type of thing. So that's really just a timing thing as well.
And the majority of that is the UK contract, correct?
Yes.
And then the wages are over budgeted. Just curious, is that from increase in pay or in overtime, or is there any particular thing on increases in wages?
I would say that is a little bit of the overtime. That is, if you would agree, a little bit of the staffing and overtime, and also a little bit of the holidays, because we're kind of getting into the holiday pay and that type of thing. So that also takes account into overtime. So.
Anything else on the finances? All right, and we will have a finance committee in January?
Yes.
All All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Oh, can you help me? This is not moving. All right. I believe our next item on the agenda is our resolution for independent audit services. So I will present that. Let me turn that page. So we have here our resolution requesting the board's authority to enter into contract negotiations for independent audit services. As we do every so often, we issued an RFP for these services with proposals received back on November 18th. We received one responsive and qualified proposal, and that was from Crow. I will note that Crow is our incumbent provider. Even in situations where we do only receive one, we still put them through the evaluation process to ensure that they are responding to our specifications and meeting our needs. So today we do recommend an award for Crow. The term of the contract awarded will be an initial 3 years, and then there will be 2 additional options. The pricing is included in your resolution for your reference, but I also wanted to speak to some of the board's comments last month, because we did have some discussion about the fact that Crow had been our provider for a little while. So as I said, we do a request for proposals, and in addition to advertising that locally and through our procurement website, we also publish that solicitation in Transit Talent, which is an industry-wide publication. So it would get eyes across the nation from different companies. 10 companies downloaded the RFP, and we only had one response, of course, one actual proposal submitted. We had several companies that responded to the no reply form that we sent out. Some of the responses that we received said there was a conflict of interest within the company. One of their staff members had an affiliation with a board member. We do not feel we can be competitive. Recently added some large new clients, therefore we don't know that we can properly staff a Lextran engagement. One of them had a slight issue with some of the financial information that is requested. I believe that perhaps they didn't see the part of the solicitation that said some of the information would not be subject to open records. So basically, anything that a competitor might see, that would not have to be disclosed, and they may not have seen that within the information. But unfortunately, we didn't know that was an issue for them until after the fact. So I did want to be mindful of those comments and share that with you. And also, we have spoken with Crow, who is our incumbent provider, and let them know that if we did move forward with this, we would like to switch partners. We have had Scott as our partner for a number of years, and they have agreed that they can do that. The partner that they have offered is Mr. Brad Shell, who staffs the Transit CFO roundtables. I think you might have heard Nikki talk about that over the last almost 2 years now with COVID. So he staffs that. His expertise is in public sector, working with transportation authorities and airport authorities. So I would feel comfortable with that if the board does as well. And so that is who I recommend to you today to move forward with a contract. I'm happy to answer any questions. Sorry.
Yeah, are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
That motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much. I do not have a change order to report at this time, nor do I have any old business to share during this meeting. I had spoken with Harding Dowell, our chair, and had also spoken briefly with Mr. Ward about a potential new business item, and that would be the hybrid meeting option that we have been engaged in over the last period of time, as well as the live stream of our meetings. I also spoke to Ann Tyler, who is our counsel that is here with us normally, and she asked us, what process did you go through to begin live streaming your meetings? And as I did some research, in March of 2020, when everyone had to change their business model, I don't think we met that month at all. We canceled our meeting. And then the following meeting was in April, and it was at that point that we went fully virtual with board and staff participation, and we also announced to the public at that time how they could participate in that virtual option, as well as view that on the different platforms, YouTube, or participate in the WebEx. So that is how we did that. And that seems to be the new standard that most agencies are doing. If they have begun live streaming their meetings, they have continued to do so even when they have returned in person or in a virtual format. And so that is one part of the issue that I wanted to understand the board's feeling on, as well as understand the board's feeling about virtual participation or hybrid participation. A couple months back, I've lost track of time of how many months that has been, I did an informal survey of the board to gauge the board's desire to return to in-person meetings. And most people wanted to return to an in-person meeting, which we have done. And I shared with Harding, I said, I never explicitly said this to the board and probably should have. But I had always intended for someone to still have a virtual participation option if that was their last resort to get there. But I made an assumption and never explicitly said that. So I do apologize for that and wanted to understand the board's feeling on that, knowing that our desire is first to be here in person. We make every effort to participate in person, but if we cannot do so or would otherwise miss our quorum and miss the opportunity to take action, knowing that virtual remains an option. And I had spoken with Mr. Dowell about that, and we seem to be in agreement, and obviously may have to return to full virtual at some point, depending on what the public health and safety guidance is. So I wanted to put that out there for discussion, if there is discussion, and bring that to the board's attention.
Jill, I have a legal question, I guess, and maybe this is an Addison question. So, we never had a hybrid component before, right? Pre-COVID, we always met in here. And was it live streamed? Was it on YouTube at the time?
At that time, no. And I shouldn't say we never did. There were a couple of board meetings where we would not have otherwise had quorum. And we relied upon the guidance at that time that said that in order for virtual participation to count, the member must be able to see and be seen, as well as hear and be heard. And so, yes, I do recall that. So we had relied upon that guidance previously. Even in those cases, the public participation had been, the room was open.
And then could the public see the meeting? Because I do think I don't know if that was a benefit before, that's a great benefit now that the meetings are live on YouTube. You can watch even if you're not physically here. Was that happening pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, that was not an option. We had not broadcast the meeting in any way.
And that's a different question, just should we continue broadcasting? And I would say yes,
Yes.
but should we continue to have a hybrid option? Because I think there's been back and forth on the state, there was like a month in August where they said no hybrid meetings and then came back and said you could have hybrid meetings. Is there any, what the temperature politically of keeping that hybrid meetings is?
I'm not 100% sure about that, but the way that, variants are popping up, I would say a hybrid meeting is a positive thing. I don't think they're gonna shoo those away anytime soon. Like I said, I'm not for sure. I can look into that and let you all know for sure, but it would be my opinion that they.
Well, and maybe you have it in front of you, does the new executive order continue to allow hybrid meetings?
The guidance, as you said, there was a small blip in time where there was a House bill that and I may get the two backwards, so forgive me if I do that. I think there was a House bill that said all operations must return to normal. And then a short period of time later, there was a Senate bill that said you can continue virtual meeting options, and doing that is acceptable. One thing that I will note that they have explicitly said, and I have noticed that Fayette County Public Schools does this. So if you offer a virtual meeting, you must provide space at your location for a member of the public to come in and watch it. So in the event that someone does not have a computer or mobile device that would allow them to watch the meeting, so say, for example, we were all participating virtually, we could broadcast that meeting here in this space, and a member of the public could come in and watch. So I did pull that nugget out of some of the recent guidance and noted that we would need to do that in the option, in the event that we went fully virtual in the future.
Other board members' thoughts? Mine were just more questions about what's the status of hybrid meetings. So I couldn't tell from the House and Senate bills if it was passed in perpetuity or if it was just another temporary order to allow hybrid meetings. And maybe that's something we look into. Mr. Motley.
So I don't have any concerns about having hybrid meeting if that's the direction we decided to go. The only thing that's just coming up for me is just like the management of things like public comment, and so we can find a way to just to manage those and make sure that that can happen in a way that makes sense.
Sure.
We haven't had any virtual public comment through this whole time, have we?
I think we did early
some,
on,
yeah.
early on if I recall, but not a tremendous amount. And that is something that we can make a more concerted effort in notifying the public of how to make those comments if they are unable to do so in person.
Yeah, because I have quite like it's a chat public comment, or you have to speak over the line.
If they offer the chat item during the public comment section of the meeting, am I recalling that correctly? Because we ran into that.
I think our chat comment was off. And so if someone does want to make public comment virtually, they can send us an email to info@lextran.com.
That's what we ended up doing.
Okay.
Make sure that they have the means to be able to do so. They can do a written comment and read that to the board, or they could come virtually and do that.
You're speaking to the chat feature on YouTube, correct? The situation that I was remembering was someone used the chat feature in WebEx.
That's what
And so that has been quite some time, but yes, we do have a means for someone to submit a public comment. It just might not be happening in real time.
real time. Yeah.
But the chat in WebEx, if you write a comment, is not considered public comment. You need to come on and say something.
If they don't do it during the public comment section, it was not. I believe that was the guidance that we had. I'm looking at you, and I didn't talk to you about this question at all, Addison. So I apologize. You don't have to be the repository of all knowledge for the last 2 years. But I do believe that was the guidance that we had received at that time. Was that if the comment was not made during the public comment section of the agenda, it did not count, if you will, as public comment.
Is the question here is whether the board would have an interest in entertaining that kind of a resolution? Is that in this conversation right now?
Mostly just to take the board's temperature on the option to continue the virtual meetings and the broadcast feature.
Well, and Lord knows I may still have a circumstance where I wake up and forget that we're in person.
Last month, he told me he almost didn't come.
Almost missed it.
So right now, the discussion is, we will be in person when at all possible, but there will still be a hybrid option for board members who can't make it, but the preferred option is to come in person, a board member to come in person. And would that need to be an official resolution, or is that a board policy, or is that a bylaws discussion?
I don't necessarily, I don't know that we would want to take action on it because when next month the world implodes and we have to do something different, or that is, or public guidance says otherwise, we may not want to be required to take board action to come out of that situation. But I think the discussion at the board level is good, and to just kind of have some consensus on where we are.
Yeah, I would say we use our best judgment and follow the guidance, legal guidance that's provided.
Okay. All
Kind
right.
of leave it at that, right?
Well, yeah, I think that's a good plan, George.
Can I, so I think, I don't know if it's under the new business item, I'm just thinking about on the public comment we had today.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot, I mean, I remember we had a policy for a while of providing some response to public, like we don't do it in the moment, but in the next meeting, there's some sort of response. Is that something we'll continue?
We can do that. Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be good to respond to that, public comment.
Yeah, really good. Just to reiterate what your point was, is when there's public comment, as a board, we're giving guidance not to respond in the moment, but we can respond at the next meeting. So I thank you very much for your comments, and that's when we'll be responding. But thank you, Christian, for pointing that out. Proposed agenda items for future meetings. We have a resolution to establish a reserve policy that we've been talking about at the Finance Committee, as well as a resolution to exercise option year for prayer transit services.
That is correct. And one thing that I failed to include on the agenda that will be an action item in January is the annual board approval of our agency safety plan. We did that last January, which feels like a lifetime ago, but that is something that is required, an annual approval that's required by FTA. That will include our annual, updated annual statistics as far as safety goes, and ensure that all of the contact information and accountable executives are correct in the document that we submit to FTA. So those are 3 items that I do know we will be looking to do in the coming month.
When does the option year begin for paratransit services?
The option year does not begin until July. However, recently found that in the existing contract, there is language that says Lextran will make the contractor aware with no less than 180 days of their intent to exercise an option year.
So we will be there,
We will be there.
and we
but-
won't have enough time to do an RFP for an alternative, it sounds like.
Well, there's always language in all of our standard contracts and RFPs that gives us options. We always give ourselves some options in that standard language. Our thought here was to continue to give our existing provider some time to work through some of the issues that they have been experiencing in recent months, and attempt to go from there.
Have they had a management change?
They have not. Well, that is both true and not true. The people that are directly involved in the Wheels program have not changed. The executive director of the Bluegrass chapter of the Red Cross changed in 2020.
Yeah.
That was our former board member,
I'm sorry?
correct? Was that Tawanda?
Tawanda.
Our former board member? Or
To-
she might have been the one before.
She left a while back.
She left a while ago, and the person who took her place, if I remember correctly, was someone local to Lexington and local to Red Cross, but had performed in a different role.
But the Wheels oversight has been,
Has remained constant, yes.
How long has Wheels and Lextran had the partnership? A long time?
A very long time. I don't know that. I can say with near certainty that Wheels is the only person who has ever provided the paratransit service since it has been required.
So maybe we should have them come and talk to us about what they're going to do to
Okay.
improve the service.
We did, years ago, we had reports, periodic reports
Yeah.
from our paratransit provider, so certainly can do that.
maybe tell them what our concern is and
Absolutely.
just have them come address that.
Any other proposed items? And I may have missed this if you guys discussed this last month, and I know it's all still in flux, but what the infrastructure bill means for Lextran.
We know there will be several competitive funding programs available. I think I saw one come through, a notice from FTA come through while we have been here. We do not have certainty on what that will do to our formula funding. However, some of the rumors and early indications we are hearing is that is likely to double our federal formula allocation on an annual basis.
And so maybe at next meeting or future meetings, once it gets a little bit more fleshed out, and it could be a nice time to refresh the board on what the federal formula is
Sure.
and federal guidelines, and then
Sure.
understanding the infrastructure bill.
Yes.
And I believe it has a lot of incentives for electric
Mhm.
buses, and I know we've had discussion about our ratio of electric buses on this board.
Yes.
So that's a proposed item. Any other proposed item? Do we need a motion on this? On any?
Not on the, no.
And then the next is closed session.
We are not going to have closed session today.
And then
There's
do I-
no need.
No need for closed session, and do I have a motion for adjournment?
Please.
We have a motion by Mr. Ward and a second by
I'll take that second.
Mr. Motley. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?